Hi, I'm Gabrielle Denman, and this will be my presentation on functional behavior assessment / functional analysis. So I'm doing my field experience at a company called PBS, which stands for Positive Behavior Supports. And they do in-home therapy or in community therapy exclusively, so they don't have like any kind of center where clients can get center-based therapy. It's either in their homes or it could be in their schools. It could be at the park, at their gym, something like that. And I do mostly in home therapy, and then I work at one school, or I do therapy at one client's school with her 2 days a week. And then I do a lot of community outings with most of my clients, like going to church with them or going to the park, going to like a store or a trampoline park, things like that. So that's kind of like the setting where I'm getting my field experience. And I work with 6 different clients week to week. Most weeks I work with all of them. But I work with at least 4 different clients a week, so I get a lot of varied experience during my field experience. My experience with behavioral assessments is almost zero. I've been trying to basically the role that I'm in at my company is I'm an RBT, but then I'm also like a student analyst, which is kind of like their transitionary role between being an RBT and becoming a BCBA if you're in your master's program on that path. So they offer like opportunities for student analysts to help BCBAs with assessments and things like this, but I haven't been able to basically line up an opportunity to do an initial assessment, and then I think this next week I'll be able to help one of my BCBAs with a reassessment. So my experience so far is limited, but I'm working on building it up. So researching this was good experience for me, like before I actually do it at my job and gain experience with it in the field. So next is my literature review. I found 3 articles, and I'm going to do a little review of each one of them. So the first one was a comparison of functional behavior assessment methodologies with young children, descriptive methods, and functional analysis. So this study described the use of functional behavior assessment to guide the development of behavior intervention plans, the use of functional behavior assessment to guide the development of behavior intervention plans continues to increase since they were first mandated in IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. There's a variety of indirect and direct instruments have been developed to facilitate the process, although many researchers believe that a full functional analysis is necessary to identify the function of a behavior. More rapid and efficient FBA procedures are more commonly used. So this study examined the correspondence between indirect and direct FBA procedures, and there was also 3 descriptive assessments and a functional analysis for 4 children who were at risk for emotional and behavioral disorders. So they separated all descriptive and experimental results, and the assessment order was counterbalanced, and there was also the descriptive assessments ended up having low consistency with each other. And the results of 2 indirect FBA assessments, the functional assessment interview and the motivational assessment scale, had low agreement with the results of the functional analyses. However, the direct assessment procedure, the ABC assessment, had high agreement with the results of the functional analysis for all 4 participants. And so these results ended up supporting the use of direct observations and indicated that indirect measures should really be used with caution and not typically used as standalone assessments for determining the function of challenging behaviors. So that was like a review of the first study that I used to help me answer the rest of the questions. So the second study was practitioner perspectives on hypothesis testing strategies in the context of functional behavior assessment. So the study said that when the results of descriptive functional behavior assessments are inconclusive, experimental analysis methods can be used to directly test hypotheses about when or why a student is engaging in challenging behavior. So despite growing research on practical variations of hypothesis testing in schools, the study says that these methods are rarely incorporated into FBAs in practice. So to inform practitioner perspectives on hypothesis testing as part of FBAs, the study surveyed a statewide sample of school practitioners who participate in the FBA process. So the survey addressed their views on 3 hypothesis testing strategies, which were functional analysis, antecedent analysis, and concurrent operant analysis across multiple dimensions. So using a 5-point Likert type scale, participants rated acceptability of procedures, feasibility of implementation, utility of results, conditions in which they would likely use or recommend the strategy, and perceived barriers. So the study used descriptive and non-parametric statistical analyses to compare ratings among the 3 hypothesis testing strategies. And the majority of participants rated all 3 strategies favorably with respect to the utility of results, but their ratings on acceptability, feasibility, and barriers favored the concurrent operant analysis over the functional and antecedent analyses. So the study discussed implications for practice and future research on incorporating hypothesis testing in FBAs, which the implications that they sort of established were that the utility of all 3 is high. However, the people actually implementing the procedures tend to favor the acceptability, feasibility, and think there's lower barriers when they do the concurrent operant analysis over the functional and antecedent analyses. So that was the second study that I used. And then the last one was called Comparisons of Functional Behavior Assessment Procedures to the Functional Analysis of Problem Behavior. So this study says functional behavior assessment is a mandated and evidence-based practice when students' problem behavior interferes with their learning. So the type of FBA conducted can differ widely between schools, which leads to questions about the validity of the conclusions reached, as they say. So the current study conducted indirect, ABC interview, functional analysis screening tool, questions about behavioral function, descriptive, ABC narrative, and experimental functional assessment methods like EFA and functional analysis of problem behavior for 14 children who were engaging in socially reinforced problem behavior. So the study compared exact and partial convergence between these FBA procedures alone and combination with each other to the EFA. So results showed that the FBA procedures identify the function Results showed FBA procedures exactly identified the function of the problem behavior less than 25% of the time, but there was higher convergence between the FBA methods and the EFA when they evaluated partial convergence. And so for partial convergence, the FBA procedures correctly identified at least one of the functions of problem behavior at least 70% of the time. Sorry, I lost my place. So the implications of this study discussed were that using an FBA can be useful because it has a high success rate with identifying at least one of the functions or at least some of the functions of the problem behavior, but ideally shouldn't be used alone, shouldn't be used without a functional analysis because it has quite low accuracy, less than 25% accuracy in establishing all of the functions of behavior. And of course, it's important to establish all the functions. And of course, it's important to establish all the functions of behavior, which a functional analysis is demonstrated as being necessary for most of the time, according to this study. So that was the final study that I reviewed. And those and other research and just my experience helped inform me on answering the rest of these questions. So how do you determine when you should conduct a functional behavior assessment? So you're going to use a functional behavior assessment when you have a challenging behavior that presents itself, and you need to establish the function in order to establish what could potentially be an effective intervention. So you'll use an FBA when you have a person presenting with a challenging behavior that would benefit from reduction. So you use an FBA to assess the function of it, which then allows you to design an intervention for it. And then what constitutes a problem behavior? It's hard to say. Most people would give a different definition, like a slightly different definition from the next person. But a problem behavior to me means any kind of behavior exhibited by a person that disrupts their learning or someone else's learning or their sort of peace of mind or someone else's peace of mind. So if they're being disruptive at home or in the classroom by vocalizing really loudly or yelling or banging on the table, those could be disruptive to other people even if it doesn't bother them, versus if they're engaging in a behavior of not paying attention during class, looking around, not looking at the book, not looking at the teacher. That might not affect anyone else in their class, but it would affect them. It would affect their learning, so that would be a problem behavior because it affects them. So I think of anything, a problem behavior would be anything that creates a barrier to learning or living a peaceful life for that person or other people in their life. So what is the difference between an FA and an FBA? So an FBA collects data directly and indirectly to determine the antecedents, behavior, and consequences for a particular behavior, and hypothesizes functions based off of that data. While a functional analysis is often part of an FBA, but a functional analysis actually can establish whether a hypothesis can basically prove a hypothesis, can demonstrate a functional relationship between a test condition and a behavior. So a functional analysis tests different hypotheses that might have been established from an earlier part of the FBA, tests those hypotheses by using a test condition and comparing it to the behavior, using a test condition to test the behavior, and determine if there's a functional relationship between certain conditions and the behavior. And so the FBA can demonstrate an actual functional relationship, while an FBA can only hypothesize about what the relationship might be. So that's the main difference between an FA and an FBA, I would say, is that an FA can give you a more certain answer, while an FBA is faster, easier to do, but the hypotheses, the potential functions that it gives you are less certain than if you do an FA, which is more time intensive and more effort consuming, but gives you a more probable answer about the functions of the behavior. So my organization, we do in-home therapy, and so I work with a lot of different BCBAs, and the organization seems to give them a lot of autonomy with designing and implementing programs and kind of what they do for that. And a functional analysis isn't required for any cases at my company, as far as I'm aware. So I'm not sure if they do functional analysis at all. I just know it's never been done on any cases that I work on. They definitely do FBAs. And so I guess I'll say first. So my organization only really does FBAs as far as I know, but when you should use an FBA versus an FA. So FBA you can do more quickly, more efficiently. If you, say in a school where you have a lot of students exhibiting a problem behavior, it would be more efficient to use an FBA than to try to do the time-intensive FA. But if you have a really problematic behavior or really dangerous behavior, an FA would be better to use because you really need to pinpoint the functions of it in order to reduce it. So for the FBA for my organization, I'm going to kind of walk you through the file that they use that has the different steps that are part of the FBA. And the FBA takes, sorry, I don't know if I can reverse my camera. like this. I want to walk you through sort of the file that my company uses for when they do an initial assessment, which includes the FBA. Hopefully that's clearly visible. So the first part is the record review and the family medical and behavioral interview, in which, sorry, I'm trying to align this. I thought I would be able to reverse my camera while taking a video, but I cannot. Okay. So the record review would be reviewing things like their school history, their family custody history, any assessments that they've had for intellect or the diagnostic screening for autism would be in their record review. And then they have the family medical and behavior interview, which just asks relevant family members questions about their medical history and sort of their general behavior history. And then they have direct observation, which is just taking ABC data on deceleration and acceleration behaviors. And then lastly, they have the more specific aspect of the FBA, which is completing a MASS, FAST, or QABF. So my company only requires one for each case, and some different insurances require a specific one, and some allow the BCBA to choose. So the MAS is the Motivation Assessment Scale, FAST is the Functional Analysis Screening Tool, and then the QABF was the questions about behavioral function. Sorry, I haven't actually conducted any of these myself. I was just researching for them for this project, so apologies if I got any of the acronyms wrong. But so the BCBA has to complete one of those with the caregiver as part of the FBA assessment. So that's each part of the FBA for my company that they do during part of the initial assessment. So, go back. In conclusion, what I would like to learn more about for FBAs and FAs is, I guess, how to make an FA as efficient as possible, because it seems like one of the biggest barriers to using them is that they take a long time and they're effort intensive, but they clearly produce more accurate, reliable data. So it would be ideal if we were able to implement them more efficiently and easily to make them more accessible, especially to school staff who are trying to evaluate a lot of kids at one time for a behavioral issue. And then how the assessments conducted in my field experience placement compared to what I've learned in my coursework. I don't really know because I haven't done assessments in my field work yet. But looking at my company's file for how they do assessments, it seems to line up pretty well with how functional behavior assessments have been described, like what tools are used. It seems like my company uses tools that align pretty well with what I've been learning. So yeah, this was my presentation on functional analysis and functional behavior assessment. Sorry for the tech issues with trying to see my screen for the visual aid. All right, thank you.